Modern digital humor has moved far beyond the traditional setup and punchline. We've traded recognizable jokes for a landscape of brain-melting, surreal nonsense that actively defies explanation. Take the dog sitting in this burning room. He's surrounded by a literal catastrophe, yet he sips his coffee and insists this is fine. It's an aesthetic of total denial that has become a defining mood for our social feeds. We are biologically wired to seek order, to ask why, and to demand that the world makes sense. However, the universe responds to those demands with randomness and indifferent silence. This constant mismatch creates a friction that is exhausting to navigate. Our glitchy meme culture serves as a collective symptom of that friction. It is the sound of millions processing an existential crisis that logic alone cannot resolve. The philosopher Albert Camus defined this friction as the absurd. For him, it wasn't just a feeling, but the violent collision between our human need for meaning and the unreasonable silence of the world. This diagram maps out our historical responses to the void. We can surrender entirely through physical suicide, or perform a philosophical suicide by leaping into a rigid ideology to hide the silence. Camus, however, pointed toward a third path, lucid rebellion. He illustrated this rebellion with the myth of Sisyphus, a man condemned by the gods to push a massive boulder up a mountain for eternity, only to watch it roll back down every time. Camus famously concluded that we must imagine Sisyphus happy. Freedom comes from acknowledging the meaningless struggle and choosing to push the rock with a defiant smile anyway, refusing to be crushed by the futility. The ruins in this photograph show what happened when 20th century logic failed. The irrational slaughter of World War I destroyed the belief that society was guided by progress or divine order, leaving humanity to face a hollowed-out reality. In the wake of that trauma, artists in the Dada movement used nonsense as a weapon. They decided that if the world chose to be senseless, their art would mock the very idea of a rational society. Marcel Duchamp executed this perfectly in 1917 by submitting a porcelain urinal to an art exhibition. By signing a piece of plumbing and calling it a masterpiece, he forced a confrontation with how we arbitrarily assign value to objects. Surrealism took this further by separating everyday objects from our expectations. In this painting by René Magritte, we see a realistic pipe that serves as a trap for our assumptions. The caption beneath it is the key. Ceci n'est pas une pipe. It's an honest reminder that we are looking at oil on canvas. Our belief that it is a pipe is a projection we've been taught to accept. These artists demonstrated that the humor lives in the room. The velvet ropes, the ornate frames, and the artificial rules invented to hide the void beneath. Modern internet culture has democratized this rebellion. What was once the domain of avant-garde galleries is now a sort of neo-Dadaism, available to anyone with a smartphone and a sense of irony. You can see this shift in this meme, where the ancient curse of Sisyphus meets the "Are you winning, son?" stick figure. The weight of existential futility has been repackaged into the language of everyday digital labor. Without gatekeepers to explain the meaning, we process our dread through shareable, decentralized loops of nonsense. These surreal posts serve as a decentralized survival mechanism. They allow a generation to stare down an indifferent cosmos by turning its silence into a communal joke. But irony has a limit. This macro shot of a dandelion being torn apart by the wind represents the point where intellectual games fail. If everything is an illusion, how do we account for the devastating reality of losing someone we love? This text exchange sets a strict boundary for the philosophy. It notes that the absurdity of existence is funny, unless you're mourning your mom. Grief is the domain where the irony must end. The localized weight of mourning is a sacred experience. It is a raw, physical reality that cannot be bypassed by intellectualization or a clever punchline. This sting provides the final proof of the philosophy. The pain confirms that the connection was real and significant to you, regardless of whether the universe acknowledges it. The universe owes us no answers. So we survive the fire by building our own temporary pockets of meaning. We return to the dog in the burning room, not as a victim of denial, but as a symbol of quiet survival. The fire is real, but he has decided that for right now, this is fine.